Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Brothers and sisters, before getting into the theme of the Khutbah today, I ask that we remember our brothers and sisters throughout this ummah that the Prophet Muhammad may be suffering, whether we know the cause of that suffering or not. Perhaps the suffering is coming from their own hands. Perhaps the suffering is in our own house. We may be too arrogant to recognize the kind of oppression that we are submitting our families to. But today I want to ask us to make a special dua for our brothers and sisters in the Sudan. The Sudan has had an ongoing conflict, a civil war that has been going on now for about 2 years. And during this particular period of time, there have been 11 million Sudanese civilians who have been forced to become nomads within their own country. There's no home for them, there's no food sustaining level that they can maintain. They can't maintain their health with the kind of starvation rationings that they're able to get after having been forcibly removed from their homes. And those who are keeping statistics are saying that by September of this year, there will be perhaps 2.5 million Sudanese, men, women, and children, non-combatants, who will be caught up and killed in the civil war that's going on between these two warring factions. I want to just point out too that this civil war that's going on in Sudan and the horrific kind of starvation and famine that's being caused, why is it that we don't hear about it? Why don't we turn on our television and look at the news and every single day see something about what's going on in Sudan? This is a Muslim country. That part of Sudan that was not Muslim, like for the most part in the southern part, the imperialists were able to help break this away from the nation. where the most of the oil was located in the country. There has to be a reason why you and I hear so little about this conflict and the death and destruction that is causing in the Sudan. Brothers and sisters, make dua for the continuing genocide that is happening with our brothers and sisters, the women, children, the babies in Philistine, in Palestine, and particularly in Gaza. And a bad trick is being played on the world as we focus so much attention on what's going on in Gaza. If we don't pay attention closely, we won't recognize that the largest land grab that has happened in over 30 years in that part of the world is happening right now. It's like years ago, photographers would take pictures of little children, and they would have a little bird or something, a plastic bird, and say, watch the birdie to keep the kids' attention. It's like that happening to us today when we look at that land and we can only see and hear and read about what's going on in Gaza and don't understand that the largest land grab of that land in over 30 years is taking place now in the West Bank. It's taking place not in Gaza, but it's taking place around Gaza, taking place in other parts of Palestine. So remember, our brothers and sisters in Al-Jumah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them Jannah. Amen. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue for the world of the Muslims to look at them and be proud and be strengthened in their iman by seeing the kind of conviction that they have, how they're holding on to this deen in spite of the attempt to erase them off the face of the earth. Brothers and sisters, this one other thing, remember our brothers and sisters out this country who are incarcerated, who are locked up in prisons, federal, state, and local jails all across the country. In the state of Texas, which arguably has the largest population of any state in the country, locked up, confined in jails and prisons than any state in the country. With the heat wave that the nation is going through, there are prisons in the state of Texas, in this hot state, that don't have any kind of air conditioning. And so what is logically going to happen when you have people confined like that with no air conditioning? People, many of the inmates are dying, not from maladies, sicknesses, but they're dying from the heat because this state won't provide the resources that are necessary to have air conditioning. Texas is not the only state. The state of Arizona, where Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin is being confined, this particular institution in Tucson, it has no air conditioning. This has been going on for 3 weeks. And many of us are trying to find out what's the condition of Imam Jamil since he had so many health issues. So remember our brothers and sisters who are confined to local and state and federal prisons, the kind of treatment that they're getting, ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve their suffering, because so many, such a significant population of the prison populations are Muslim. Brothers and sisters, I just want to take a few moments today to remind myself and to remind you of something that you're already so aware of. It's the storytelling, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran brings us stories about the previous generations, even before the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in so few words so beautifully unfolds the stories about those prophets that came before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah, in His infinite wisdom, chose to have encased in this eternal Quran. One of the stories that you and I are so familiar with because of the number of times that the name and the story of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam is mentioned in the Quran. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats the name of His prophet more than any other prophet that's contained in His book. And the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, I just want to share for the purpose of the Khutbah today, just a snapshot, a part of the story of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and some of the stories that you and I can take from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said about him and his mission and the opposition that he and the believers at that time faced. And perhaps you and I can strengthen our iman when we say that it may be hard, it may be rough, but at least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not tested us in the way that those believers at the time of Musa alayhi salam were tested. Brothers and sisters, in the interest of time, I won't read in interpretation and translation a number of verses I'm trying to express in the weak words that I have the meaning of what some of these ayahs that I'm referencing are telling us and the lessons that we get from them today. Brothers and sisters, we know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet Musa alayhi salam to the Fir'aun with this dual mission of telling Fir'aun to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, stop this nonsense of calling yourself a God, calling yourself a Lord over the people, and free those people that you enslaved, and that system, that pharaonic system had enslaved for so many, perhaps centuries. Let the people go. Free these people. You and I know that before the time of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, the Pharaoh and Pharaohs before them were aware that at some point this is going to have to come to an end. We're having a good run. We're oppressing the people. We have a whole race of people who are at our beck and call. We've enslaved them. They do whatever we tell them to do. We beat them like animals. We can treat them any way we want. We are powerful. We are mighty in the land. And the one who felt this more than anyone were those various Pharaohs at the time of Musa alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That Muslim researchers and scholars and many have come to the conclusion that the particular Fir'aun, the Pharaoh at the time of Musa, was one by the name of Ramses II. And Ramses wasn't the first of the pharaohs to be confronted by Tawheed and messengers coming to him, individuals coming to him, calling them to the oneness of Allah. But this particular pharaoh at the time of Musa alayhi salam did something that he never in his wildest dreams, and none of the pharaohs could have imagined, that we're going to end up raising in our palace. We're going to educate. We're going to dress. We're going to teach them. We're going to make them strong. We'll give them status in the society. We will allow them to everybody to look and say, this may as well be the son of the Pharaoh. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have it, and you know the story better than I, that Musa alayhi salam was one from the oppressed, from the slave class. He was one that through a miraculous set of events, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the word was put out, kill these boys of those Jewish people, kill the boys, and then kill the first First it was the firstborn, now kill them all. Just kill all of the sons. Kill those babies of these people. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spared the Prophet Musa alayhi salam by inspiring his mother to place him in a basket and put him in the river. And the river that he excuse me, someone's car is blocking the driveway. Just for future reference, don't interrupt about a car. Let it get told. Okay, brothers and sisters, so the prophet Musa alayhi salam miraculously, his mother put him in the Nile. It was fast moving. If anybody seen the Nile, it's not a little trickle like Muslim Lake. It's a fast moving river. And the mother, with her belief in Allah, put him in a basket. And what happened, someone from the household of the Fir'aun got the body of the baby and took it into the house of Pharaoh, and he was raised in the house of Pharaoh. And you and I know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, then now is the time for you to go to that man who raised you like his son, who dressed you in the finest clothes, who gave you the best education of the time. You grew up in the palace of the Pharaoh, but now it's time for you to go and announce to him that you left these people that you've enslaved for so long. Let them go, free them, and stop this nonsense of worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, just to try to shorten the story that I'm trying to tell, you and I know that even under that oppressive system, that the very wife of the Fir'aun, Asiya, was a believer. That she's married to the most biggest madman that had walked the earth in a very long time, if ever. But his wife, Asiya, was a believer. And Asiya helped raise and took care of Musa alayhi salam. And when the Pharaoh found out that his very wife was believing in the message that Musa was bringing, he ordered his henchmen quarter her, meaning tie her arms and her legs, have her tied like on a pole, chain her up with her arms and legs chained up, and beat her and torture her. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, tells us the Prophet in the Hadith literature, that when she was at the point where she could hardly take any more of this kind of torture, that she called out, and it's in the Quran, she called out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take her away from this torture. I've reached my limit. And then show me my place in paradise. If I am promised a house in paradise, show me that house. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a way that only He could, before she died, showed her her house in Jannah, showed her house in paradise. We know from the literature that there was another sister who Allah showed her house, and that was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad Khadijah. You and I know, when we read the Hadith literature, that the beautician, the woman that did the hair for one of the daughters of Imam, was a closet believer. Now she's combing and beautifying the daughter of Imam. No one knows she's a believer until, and this is in the Hadith literature, until she dropped the comb that she was stroking the daughter's hair with. And when she picked it up, she said, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. And the daughter asked, are you talking about my father? Is this the name that you're picking this comb up with? She told her, no, I'm talking about the one who controls the heavens and the earth. I'm talking about the one that your father should be worshiping. So the daughter went to the father and told the father what this beautician, this is a lady I trusted. And now she's talking about she's believing in what Musa and those other traitors are doing. And so, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have it, this sister was also tortured to death. But the way she was tortured, she had 4 children, and the way that she was tortured, the Pharaoh had a big fire to be built. And when this fire was built, he said, now throw her 4 children one by one into the fire to be burnt to death. And save her, the beautician, save her for last with the baby. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have it, and the baby, as the hadith says, was suffering at the time that her brothers and sisters had jumped into the fire, and now the mother was to jump, and the beautician hesitated. She stopped. She hesitated. If I jump in, I'm killing not just myself, but I'm killing this innocent infant. And one of the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allowed this child to speak to his mother and to tell the mother, go on and jump. That the punishment of the hereafter is nothing compared to the ease of which we would die in this fire today. At least we just die right off. We're not eternally punished. And now you're doing the right thing, so just go ahead and jump. It's wonderful women being separated from the soft parts of the brothers and sisters. It's not a one-on-one analogy. But many of us can look at the conditions around the world in which our brothers and sisters are living today. And we look at how Allah has allowed us to live in this country. We can almost say it's almost like we're living in the palace of the Pharaoh. And compared to the conditions that so many of our brothers and sisters throughout the world are living, it's as if we're living in the lap of luxury, no matter what our income may be, no matter what the kind of car that we drive, no matter what we eat on a day-to-day basis. That you and I have to recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this part of this ummah in a nation that has so many material things that are available. Some of us would look at ourselves like we're living in the palace of the Pharaoh. And just like those believers who were having their faith for their safety, they were afraid to come out. They were afraid to come and announce to the Pharaoh. They were afraid to tell him, you're worshiping yourself. You're forcing people to worship you. You're going to be held accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I today have the responsibility not just to live in this nation and see how comfortable we can be, but our responsibility and our duty is to call this wayward nation to submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you and I are not doing that, it doesn't matter how much we are making in our businesses or on our jobs. It doesn't matter what kind of car we're driving, what kind of clothes we're wearing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the believers in any and every society for one primary reason and one alone. And that is to call the people to submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you and I are not doing that, we are missing the mark. Brothers and sisters, we find in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, in paraphrasing the expressions in the Quran, that if there is one person in a society who is taking the call of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just one person is responding, he will spare that society from destruction. As long as you and I are calling the people to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people are still responding, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised in the Quran that like those nations who were destroyed before us, that we read about in the Quran and the Hadith literature, that he wants to destroy the society. As long as there are believers taking the message to the people, and there are people who are responding. So, brothers and sisters, you and I, and I'm trying first to remind myself, I'm trying to remind all of us of the primary duty that we have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, living in a overwhelmingly non-Muslim majority society. That we can't just try to figure out and get the comforts of this environment and not call these people to submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not saying to worry somebody every time they see you, you're talking about you need to be Muslim. But at least minimally our actions, as the Prophet Muhammad told us, and Allah tells us, don't allow our weaknesses to cause somebody else not to embrace this way of life. I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. But still, I'm calling people, Islam is the way. Come, be a part of this movement to establish Allah's way on earth. But my example is something that people will look at me and say, if that's what Islam produces, if you're the kind of human being that embracing Islam and being serious about this faith produce, I don't want none of it. You're doing things that I'm not even doing, but you're claiming that you have the guidance, that you have the right path. So none of us will ever be perfect in our practice. But none of us will ever be exempted from if we know one ayah, if we know a part of an ayah, if we know one hadith, if we know the part of a hadith and can keep it in its proper context, none of us will be exempt from the responsibility of calling others to the submission to our Lord. It's a duty and responsibility that for myself, I say the material that I read is constantly reminding me. You're doing a lot of stuff, but what are you doing to specifically encourage others to embrace this way of life? So, brothers and sisters, from the moment we leave this place today, when we go back to our jobs, if you're in summer school, when you go to summer school, when you go back into your neighborhoods, don't keep your Islam as a secret, like we're in some kind of Masonic lodge or something, where you don't tell people about the mysteries of that which you have embraced, the fellowship that you belong to. Islam is not like that. Everything we know about this deen should be shared, not overburdening the people, but it should be shared with those who are not yet Muslim. And I close by saying this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know better than I, is magnificent. Magnificent Lord. How else can we account for the number of people around the world? Not talking about in Muslim majority countries. I'm talking about in little isolated places where there may not even be a masjid in some of these towns and cities and villages around the world. How else can we account for the number of people who are looking at what's going on in Gaza today and saying, I want to be one of them? Who else? What else could attract a human being to want to be a part of something where the people are being slaughtered the way that they are in Gaza. But that's what's going on right now as we gather in this mosque. It's not just people in the global south. We're talking about people all throughout Europe, all around the world. They're looking at these images and saying that look at the faith of these people. None of them are turning and saying, God, why are you doing this to us? They're trying to maintain to the best of their ability, holding on to this rope of this land and return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our being well pleased with him as our Lord, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being well pleased with us as his servants. Do, O Allah, strengthen and clarify our understanding of this deen so that it will be bear witness for good for us on the day of judgment.
Ameen.
O Allah, count us not amongst the disbelieving people or those Muslims who waver in our faith in the face of any hardship.
Ameen.
O Allah, give us an understanding of this deen that is useful for us both in this world and in the next.
Ameen.
I have a couple of announcements. Brother Khalil has an announcement.